Hello, and welcome to this session that's looking a little bit more in depth into observational and action research methods which could be used for your research project. What we'll be looking at this session is giving some insight and guidance into the different variables within observational research and action research. When you're looking at this, you should be in the process of thinking about which methods you are using for your research topic, your problem, your opportunity, and your issue. Observation might be one of them. You might be looking at this to discount this, or you might not be looking at it because you are really interested in observational research and you think it will help your research project to achieve its research objectives. And the same goes for action research. You might be considering action research and you're just trying to get a bit of an insight. And this is what this is trying to give you, a little bit of an insight so you can go off, read about it a bit more and decide whether or not these techniques will be useful. First one we'll look at is observational research. Now, observational research is defined as a systematic observation, recording, description, and analysis and interpretation of people's behaviour. Observation, as it says on the tin, is about watching people and watching situations, and trying to understand what's going on and trying to understand their behaviour, or just understand what actually is going on within a situation. And there's two major types of observational research you can look at. The first one is participant observation, and the second one is structured observation. The first one, participant observation, is much more inductive in its approach. In other words, inductive, if you remember, the inductive research approach is where we're trying to understand what's going on, we're trying to understand the meaning of what's going on, okay? We're not doing the deductive approach, which is basically testing and getting figures and hypothesis testing. The second one, structured research, is much more deductive in nature, okay? And what I mean by deductive, this is where we're gathering figures. We're trying to understand what is actually going on in terms of the figures, and it's much more qualitative. So we're gathering numbers here, okay? Many people will be interested in both of these, and again, what we'll do is just going to give you some brief insight to what they're about and how you can do them. In terms of participant observation, okay, we're mainly using this to try and understand what's going on within a social setting. Now, what do we mean by social setting? We're meaning a board of directors, a group of managers, people on the tills at Sainsbury's. Maybe we've got a research problem or opportunity that is looking acutely at a certain number of the people. It could be consumers. It could be consumers shopping around Asda. It could be consumers shopping on the internet. It could be consumers using a smartphone and how they understand and how they use a smartphone. So we're trying to observe what's going on, okay? So we can work out what's actually happening when they're using a smartphone, or when they're shopping in Asda, or when these employees are using a till. What's actually going on? And because it's participant observation, that means we're actually participating in the situation. We actually may be one of the till workers themselves. We may be a consumer ourselves. So we're actually involved in the situation as well as observing it. Okay, and of course, when you're actually immersed in the situation, you're actually involved in the situation, you get more of a richer understanding of what's going on. You get to feel the emotions. You get to understand the actual situation much better, and that's great for research because it gets you far more depth. However, one of the disadvantages with depth is you're recording a lot more detail, and that, of course, is time consuming. So that's one of the problems we've got here. So we're immersing ourselves into these situations in order to understand what's going on and possibly why it's going on as well for participant observation. We're trying to comprehend or understand and actually explain the behaviour that is happening. So some examples of participant observation. So we might want to understand what the bonus system is within a factory or a machine shop. We might be doing research over in Bangladesh. I'm not saying go over to Bangladesh and do it, but we might be doing research in Bangladesh, looking at these machine shops where they're making certain companies' clothing. What's the culture there? How they paid? What's the bonus system? Because it's nothing that we don't know. We don't know what it's about. We know something's gone on, but we need to know what it's about. Understand how it's working. So that could be something. Next one here, understanding the drama in advertising agencies. So we're looking at understanding the culture. So obviously we're going to go to an advertising agency. We're going to spend some time there. We're going to get immersed into the situation, understand what's going on, get a feeling for what's going on, observe what's going on as someone that's in within the setting, and the drama being what's the dramatic situations that are happening, how do they come up with these crazy ideas, is there arguments, if there are political tensions that come up with these ideas, is there a drama for a start with. So we're trying to understand what's actually how an advertising agency works and the characters that might be involved. You'll probably notice a lot of TV programs, documentaries, Channel 4, stuff like this, these fly-on-the-wall documentaries, are very much so participant observational research, but they're just made for TV. They're understanding a certain system. If you look at, I think it was Benefit Street on Channel 4, again, observing the lives and the behaviour of these individuals on that certain street in Birmingham, which just happened to be claiming benefits. There's also all sorts of boardroom documentaries where they're following managers around in a business and seeing what they're doing and how they behave and how they make decisions. And again, very interesting because different managers, different companies, different industries will act differently, and that's the interesting piece of the research: how they're doing it and why they're doing it. There could also be other things. I mean, I've seen observational research where people are observing consumers and how they use electronic devices in such as the iPad, a smartphone, and they're using eye tracking research and eye tracking technology within very big technological departments of universities, where they can track the eye and where it's going and avoiding adverts and stuff like that. So they're actually trying to observe the minutiae of eye movement across the screen to see what's happening. So that is observational research. You're observing what's happening. It might be just simple as you're working in a marketing department and you've been reading about how managers make decisions, especially marketing decisions, and you want to observe and understand how people make marketing decisions in the company that you're working at. Are they effective? Are they different? And is there anything different there compared to what you're reading in the literature? And of course, especially in business, consumers are really important in how consumers behave and understanding how they behave and just what they do within a store, within a website, wherever they may be. Is an amazing thing to have as a piece of knowledge and intelligence for a business. So it might be just trying to observe consumers and what they're doing and how they behave by pushing a trolley around the store, or even how they behave when they're going through a website. I mean, a lot of websites will just simply track the path in which people go through to buy a good. Now, what is the path? Do they take 5 steps? Do they take 10 steps? Is there different type of people that use different types of path? Can you kind of cluster them into different groups of people who take different paths? So it can be really interesting research. And again, observational research lends itself to a lot of different problems. So this might be something that you use for your research, or it might not be. Now, when it comes to the first type of observational research, the participant observation, that actually gets broken down into 4 major types that you can look at and consider. So it gets a little bit more complex, but don't worry. Generally, we have to make a decision on 2 things. The first thing is whether the research actually is going to be taking part in the activities or in what's happening in the company. Okay, so that's the first thing, whether you're actually going to be taking part in the activity or you're not, you're just simply observing on the sidelines. That's the first decision. The other one is to whether you're going to reveal the aim of your research. Are you revealing your identity to everyone else there, that you are researching this and you're going to be watching people and you're going to be asking them questions as they go along? Is that something you want to do? Or if you do that, will it affect the behaviour? Will they not show the behaviour that you want them to show or you think they're going to show? So there's 2 things you need to think about in terms of participant observation. The first one is, are you going to take part and work and do the same things as everyone else in this setting or in this company or in wherever it is? And the second one is, are you going to tell people about your intentions, that you're doing research and it's about this, or are you not going to tell them? And depending on the answer to those questions depends on which type of observational role you're going to take. And we'll take these 4 individually. So we've got 4 here. We've got the participant as an observer, Now, the participant as an observer, here the researcher's role is revealed to everyone else there in the setting, in the research setting, and you're taking part, the research is actually taking part and actually mucking in with anyone else. You then got the observer as a participant in the lower left of the quadrant here. So the observer as a participant here is where the researcher observes the activity but doesn't take part, okay? And the reasons for their research and their identity is revealed to the setting. Okay. On the other side, okay, we've got complete participant. This is on the top right. This is where the researcher takes part in the setting, so he or she will muck in and work with the people in the company, or be the same as the consumers, or whatever they're doing. However, their identity and the reasons for their research is concealed. Okay, and then the last one in the right lower quarter of this quadrant, we're talking about complete observer. Complete observer is where we are not taking part, we're just observing on the sidelines, so we're not actually doing what everyone else is doing, who we're observing, and we've got our identity concealed as well. Okay, now we'll take you through these little roles and see which ones you think you might want to use or may not want to use. So the first one, complete participant. Now, if you're choosing a complete participant, basically you are taking part. Now, taking part in the activities within the company. Now, this is fantastic if you work for a company part-time, you have an internship, you're working there, and you're actually trying to understand what's going on. Okay, you work there, you've got some depth knowledge, you're working with people so you can observe the behaviours and the decisions that are made, or whatever's happening, whatever you want to observe is great. However, with a complete participant, you're also concealing your identity. Now, my advice is, this is where ethics kick in a little bit, because it's a little bit like spying. That's the ethical decision here. You're spying. Now, there is certain settings where it may work. For example, at the bottom of this slide, there's an example here. You know, you're talking about there's a drinking culture. In some industries, there's a drinking culture. So at dinner time, a lot of workers, maybe even high-powered workers with high responsibility, may go out and drink at lunchtime, alcoholic drinks. Now, this was happening with the airline industry. And the only way they were being caught was through complete participants. So someone was working with them, air stewards, or they were a member of staff with these airline crews. They were going with them to lunch or whenever, dinner time, you know, drinking with them, and then absolutely observing them going onto planes and actually driving planes drunk. So, I mean, this was a few years ago, but if we told them that I was a researcher and we were looking at the behaviour of pilots, they wouldn't probably be drinking because they know it's bad. So if it's affecting the behaviour and it's something quite serious, like the airline pilot situation, then it may be better to conceal your identity. But in most 9 out of 10 cases, it's considered spying, and you actually should tell them, I'm going to do some research here, you know, I'm researching this and the other, do you mind if I take part here? I'm just going to be, you know, seeing what's happening and see how you behave, because I'm trying to understand how we make decisions and, you know, things like that. So it's fine to brief them and ask them for authorization. You should never really not ask for authorization, only in very extreme cases. So just be careful a little bit here. So, complete participant, you take part in the situation. So great if you've got a part-time job, great if you've got an internship, but you actually are concealing your identity and your reasons for your research, because if you did actually tell people why you were doing it, they probably would change their behaviour. Usually used in naughty cases when we're trying to catch out people and they're doing something naughty. So 9 times out of 10, I don't think many people will be using this one in a normal research kind of unit that we would have at an undergraduate level. The next one is complete observer. Now, a complete observer is where you don't take part, okay? You stand on the sidelines and watch people. But your identity is concealed, okay? So you're not telling them that they're watching them. Again, it has little ethical issues. And my advice is to avoid those ethical issues and actually, you know, tell people the purpose of the research and why you're doing it, because that just makes it, you know, far more simpler for everyone else. It's the accusation of spying that's the problem with here. Again, used in naughty cases where, you know, if we did say who we were, what we were doing, they probably wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't act in the way they normally act. So that's the problem here. So again, ethical issue. The difference here with complete observer is we're not taking part. We are watching them probably from afar, and this is kind of like detective type stuff. So, again, not many projects that will warrant this one, but it's worth talking about anyway, so you don't get confused. So you don't take part in the situation, and you don't tell anyone what you're doing. So it has ethical problems that you might be spying. Again, try to avoid these if you can because of the ethical issues. However, the ones that you can go for are things like observer as a participant. Okay, now this one here is where you attend a research setting to observe, but it's revealed. You have to forgive me, it's not concealed, it's revealed.